Stop wasting time on outdated SDET questions that no one actually asks anymore. If you really want to land your dream job in 2025, you need to know the real questions top tech companies are asking right now. And today I have got 5 of them that could make or break your next interview. I'm not just reading them out, I will show you exactly how to answer, what trick follows up to accept, and how to stand out from every other candidate who is your competitor. Oh, and at the end, I will share a bonus secret tip that helped my students and myself to crack SDET interviews with confidence. So grab your notes, don't skip a second, and let's deep dive straight into the question number 1 and let's make you unstoppable. Alright? So who is it ideal for? It's ideal for SDET, test engineer and QA analyst. The question difficulty will be intermediate to advanced. Let's deep dive into our first question. And don't worry, even if you're stuck anywhere, I'm going to explain everything in detail. I just want you to stay till the end. And after that also, if you have any doubt, you can come down to the comment section. So the first question is as follows: how would you design an automation framework from scratch? It's a very important and it's a very typical interview question that every engineering manager will ask you. Now how will you answer this? Alright. To answer this, you have to start with defining the requirements. Okay. You start with defining what are your requirements. The number 2 point, you have to pick a framework. Number 3, you have to design modular structure. Number 4, you have to implement logging and reporting. And number 5, you have to add CI/CD. I will explain you each and every point in detail. Okay, so let's start with point number 1. When we say start with defining requirements, the tech stack, the languages, or what are the your automation type you are using, it means, for example, you are giving a company. Let's take an example company. Okay, so it will be easier for you to understand. So for example, you are giving an interview for a company called Flipkart. I hope everyone is familiar with it. Okay, so what is Flipkart? Flipkart is an e-commerce platform. All right, so we will think it everything in the term of an e-commerce company only. Okay, and so if Flipkart is an e-commerce company and you want to say the you want to give the interview on the basis of that, then how will you say what are the requirements? So for e-commerce company, obviously there will be multiple microservices. Okay, we will just understand the structure a little bit so that it will be easier. Okay, so multiple microservices. What are the microservices? The number 1 will be payments. All right, there will be a microservice called payment. There will be another microservice called probably a catalog. There will be other microservice called probably a pricing engine. Okay, and there will be one more microservice. Let's take it as OMS, which is order management system. So these are the typical microservices which are already there in an e-commerce company. Okay, so when we say we have to define the requirement, we have to say that what tech stack we are using, what languages we will use, and what type of automation you are doing. So you can say if you are good with Java. In this channel also we have covered the Java and UI plus API automation. So you can say that okay, I will pick a tech stack, probably Java, and I will do UI automation to start with, and then I will also jump into API automation. All right, you can answer this the first point in this manner. Number 2, you have to pick a framework. So framework, you can use Selenium for UI, and you can use REST assured for API, and you can use TestNG for execution, which is the you can say the unit test classes. All right, so what we have learned till now, you are using tech stack of Java and you are doing UI automation. For UI automation, what do you use? You use Selenium. And for API automation, what do you use? You use REST assured. And what do we use TestNG or JUnit for? To write the test classes. Okay, you have to design the modular structure. How does the modular structure look like? First of all, you have to design your base class, then you have to design your POM, and then you write your utility classes, and then you write your reusable libraries. So if you're a guy from automation, you might have understood little bit. If not, then don't worry. Base class is basically where you do all your configurations, that opening up your UI and then setting up the driver factory and everything. In POM, which is the POM page object model, here what do you do? Here you set your all dependencies, okay? And in utility class you write all your helper classes. For example, you need to get data from a JSON, you write a helper class here. For example, you need to grab and open a file, you need to open a CSV, that helper class will be in utility class, okay? And reusable libraries as well. So if you answer the first 3 points, it will be enough for you to pass this question. But now once you start adding more points, the interviewer will be impressed. What are other points? Other points like you will implement logging and reporting. All right, for reporting, what do you use? You can use your Allure report. It's a very common and very famous reporting tool. You can use CI/CD to integrate with Jenkins and run on the cloud service, okay? And you can use, as usual, version control, Git, and your branching strategy. And the last point, which is called a scalability, if you answer this as well, and it's a very bonus point for you, you will, in scalability, you will talk about parallel execution, cross browser grid if needed. So parallel execution, basically, for example, you are automating your Flipkart application, okay? First of all, you automated your header. So one thread is running the code for automation of header. Now you can have other thread as well. This is my thread number 1 and this is my thread number 2. So what other thread will do? Probably other thread will go to the footer and run the automation code for the footer. Probably you can have one more thread, thread 3, which will execute the code for the main page. So similarly, once you have thread 1, thread 2, thread 3, different threads, you can have multiple threads and you can run it parallelly. And for running it parallelly, what do you use? You can use testng. It's a good question that someone can ask you. If you want to run parallel test in automation, how do you do it? You can say that I can do it with the help of testng. Okay. All right. Let's go to the second question. Okay. The second question says, what is the difference between hard assert and soft assert in test automation? This is the question which I have also asked to one of the candidates, and it was very interesting what answer he gave. I'll tell you that, but before that, let's try to understand it. It's a very simple thing, not a very complicated one. So for example, you are writing your automation, all right? So when you're writing your automation, in automation, what you're doing, basically, you are just checking if things are working or not. All right. If things are working, you say that your automation test has been passed. If thing is not working, you say that your automation test has been failed. But here also there are two conditions. Conditions like, for example, you are running your test. This is your line number 1, line number 2, line number 3, line number 4 and line number 5, and you have given some sort of assertions like you can say assert equal if the text is Flipkart or not. Okay, you have some assertion here, you have some assertion here that if the value is true or false, you have some assertion here. So when we say hard assertion means you are in line number 1, the assertion is passed, okay, no problem. You are in line number 2, the assertion is passed, okay, no problem. You are in line number 3, now the assertion got failed. So now if the assertion got failed, do you think line number 4 and line number 5 will be executed? It depends on whether you are using hard assert or soft assert. If you are using hard assert, if one line fails, the program automatically stops and it says that your automation test has been failed. But if you are using soft assertion, it will give you the error in your report and it will say it failed in line number 3, but it will continue your running the test till line number 5, and in your final report it will tell you that okay, line number 1 is passed, line number 2 is passed, line number 3 has been failed, line number 4 is passed and line number 5 is passed. So this is how soft assert and hard assert actually works. Now how do you implement hard assert and soft assert? If you have been doing automation, you might be knowing this type of assertion. So this type of assertion is called as hard assertion. This is a hard assertion which says assert.assert equals if things fail, it will fail that test case. It will not fail the entire test, but it will just fail that particular test case. Okay. Now, when we say soft assert, how do you implement that? To implement soft assert, it's very simple. We have a class called soft assert. So this class, you create an object s which is equal to new, and you write soft assert. Okay. Now s dot assert equals. Okay. Now once you write this is your soft assertion. It is as simple as that. Okay, not very complicated. All right. So with this we have completed our second question as well. If you have any doubt, you can anytime go to the comment section and write your doubt. I reply to each and every comment. All right. Let's move ahead. Okay. Now we are in question number 3. Now, what does question number 3 says? How would you handle dynamic element in Selenium? This is also a very popular interview question for automation specifically. So when you say how would you handle dynamic element in Selenium? What is dynamic element first of all? Let's try to understand that. Okay. So dynamic element basically, for example, uh, let's take our previous example only. We are on Flipkart. We have a login button. This is your login button. Now dynamic elements means once you click on login, all right, the login will take some time, the API will load, it will take some time, and after that only the contents will be visible, whatever after login content is there. All right. So now when you are running your test, and your first step in the test is to log in, and second step in your test is to check whether this line or probably an image, let's take an image, whether this image is visible or not. Image, image visible. Okay. So now after you click login and the page starts loading, and you don't wait until your page load and you just check if the image is visible or not, the image will not be visible, right? Because we have a criteria that only after login the user can see the image. So if you just instantly check that, just log in and just check that image is visible or not, then your test will fail. But ultimately, if you would have waited for probably 1 second or 100 millisecond or 500 millisecond, the image would have been loaded and your test would have been passed. Then it is giving you a false result. All right. So to handle this, we have a thing called dynamic weights. Okay, and with the help of dynamic weight we are able to handle that. Let's see what the answer says. It says use dynamic XPath, use CSS selector with partial matches. So you can answer it in a way that I will use dynamic XPath, I will use CSS selectors, I will use explicit weight, the most weights, the most important point that you need to mention. If you answer this point, then you are selected. This question has been passed. So while using explicit weight, what explicit weight does, explicit weight will click on login and then wait until the image is visible, and it has a maximum threshold if the image is not visible. So it will wait until the image is visible, and once the image is visible it will test, and then it will say okay, it is passed, and obviously it has an upper limit, and then it will say it's not visible, timeout. Okay. If element ID keep changing, you can rely on parent or sibling locators, and the best practices use page factory or custom reusable method. All right, and this is the syntax. If you can write this syntax, it will be a bonus point for you. That driver.find element by XPath, and then you write your XPath inside. Okay, so this driver.find element, this is basically your dynamic XPath. Okay. All right, let's move ahead to the fourth question. Explain how would you do API automation for a complex workflow. Now this question is not very technical, but this question tests your thinking skills. It will test how you think, what are your high order thinking skills, and what is your mindset towards testing, which is very important for an interviewer to know after technical knowledge. So to answer this, you will say, now since the question says how would you do API automation, you first need to understand whether it is UI automation or API automation. So right now let's talk about only API automation. Since it's an API automation, what you need to do, you need to first of all collect all the APIs. You have API number 1, you have API number 2, you have API number 3, you have API number 4, and dot 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 dot. You can have multiple APIs. So first of all, the first step is you will collect how many APIs do you have. Then what you will do, you will break down the flow, you will identify the endpoints, which is get, post, put, delete. You will find the type of API, whether this is a get API, whether this is a post API, whether this is a put API. You will classify the APIs. Then you will handle dependencies such as IDs, token from one API to feed the next API. Probably this APIs might be interlinked. Okay, when we talk about complex workflow means all the API is not working all the APIs are not working in a, you know, in a Xylo method. They all are interrelated with each other, and each API's performance affect the other API's performance. So you need to find the dependency, that which API is linked to which API and in what sense it is linked. Okay, this is your second step. The third step says the parameterization. You will need to do the parameterization because the data, you cannot hard code your data. You will use a CSV file, and from that CSV file you will read your data and you will feed it to the API. And this thing, the first three steps tell you about the setup of the API and doing the performance test. Once you do the setup and once you do the performance test, now what will you do? You will validate your responses. You will validate responses from API number 1, 2, 3, 4, and whatever the number of APIs that you have. You will use your authorization key. This basically you can use it as a header manager. If you are using JMeter, you can use header manager. If you are using other tool has different naming conventions. Then if you answer the first this many points, then your interview is cleared. This question will be passed. But as a bonus point, when you say that you will integrate with CI/CD, run as a part of cloud build, you get an extra point for that. And when you say that you have a LUR report and you know how to set up LUR report, then you get a more extra point. Okay. So this is how you need to answer this question. I hope this is clear. Even if after this also you have any doubt, you can just come down to the comment section. I will reply in detail. If it is required, I will create a new video as well. Okay, let's move ahead and to the last question, but not the least. How do you ensure your automation scripts are maintainable and scalable? Okay, a very typical question, and very important as well, that you need whatever automation scripts you are writing. Probably you are now there in the company, but for example after you some other guy will come. Okay, so they will need to write the code which is scalable also. And probably if new microservices coming, your code should be able to handle new microservices as well without failure. How will you make sure that you are able to do that? It's very simple, but you just need to answer this question in a systematic format. You can use the format what I have written. First of all, you can say that I will use proper folder structure. Okay, it's very important. You will have a clear separation of test, pages, utilities, and configs. You will focus on this point, reusability. So whenever you say that your code is reusable, scalable, and it's well documented, it gives you an extra point, because interviewers like that. So you will say that the code is reusable. I will write generic method and I will write generic classes which can be used across my framework. I will talk about framework pattern. Obviously, if you are writing POM, singleton driver plus factory, this give you an extra edge point so that you can have a more scalable code. And code reviews and standard, which are best practices everywhere. even for dev as well as for QA. The next is scalability. You will have parallel execution. Just now, a few minutes before, we were talking about parallel execution. So, for example, you had this screen and you want to automate this screen. You have this thread number 1, you have this thread number 2, and you want to execute thread number 1 and thread number 2 simultaneously. Then you will have to use test ng, and if you are using Python, you can use pytest or other things as well. And at last, a clear proper documentation is what everyone likes. A readme file, proper comments, and proper onboarding guide, that if a new user or a new employee comes, he or she never face any difficulty in onboarding the stuff and running the code on his own or on her own. All right. So yes, these were all the 5 questions. I hope you have liked it and you have learned something, and I wish you all the best for your interview. I will come up with a new video in the next, probably in the next session, and we'll talk about more advanced questions as well. Until then, you can consider subscribing, liking, whatever you like. I will take a leave then. Bye bye. Take care.